In this day and age, when everything is literally at your fingertips, it is great to have the type of old school, dare I say, filter that Jim Grant and Grant's Interest Rate Observer provides. He can make the most arcane and the most impenetrable both lucid and funny.
I remember when I got the first issue of Grant's Interest Rate Observer, I said, wow, this guy is a perfectionist. And man, does it show. The same today as it was 30 some odd years ago.
He gets up, he runs, and then he sits down and he writes. 7 days a week. He is singularly concerned about producing the highest quality work that he can produce.
I probably taught him all he knew just by watching what I was doing. There's no one quite like Jim. No one with his knowledge of the Federal Reserve, of interest rates, financial history, combined with constitutional principles. He is a newspaperman's newspaperman.
He grew up in Dobbs Ferry, always loved baseball, and the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Bums of the early 50s, were his team.
He went to work for the Baltimore Sun. After college, he met his future bride in the newsroom there.
He left Barron's in the early 80s and started Grant's. He had no money, 2 kids, about to be 3, and then eventually 4, and he went for it. He took the plunge.
Jim started Grant's Interest Rate Observer in 1983.
It was the beginning of the great bond bull market, and at that moment, Jim decided, why should my readers have to pay Barron's in order to get me? And he created Grant's Interest Rate Observer out of whole cloth, out of his imagination and his entrepreneurial vision, and he made it a success.
He came at it with such passion, and if you were a reader from those early days of 84 and 85 and 86, you just remember the stories. You couldn't wait for Grant's to see what he would write about next. And there was certainly the excesses of that time where they Drexel, Burnham, Lambert, the commercial property bubble. I mean, there was a lot to write about in those quaint old days of the late 80s.
One of the great things about Jim is that he can write a bearish piece on some investment with a velvet glove. If you just looked at the words and the sentences, you might think he was extolling its virtues. But in reality, he's with a very, very sharp scalpel, he's cutting them to bits.
He has a way of putting issues in great insight that's both meaningful but can be humorous too. In a way, he's got a manner about him, an ability to write that is remarkable.
Whether you agree with what he says or not, he really is phenomenally influential. And you want to know what other people think as much as what you think.
He has a quiet confidence, in no way showy or egotistical, just a single-minded belief in his ability to communicate effectively and to, if not convince people of his point of view, but rather to make people consider his point of view. My mother has been at his side since they married in the early 70s. They are a quintessential team. They look out for each other, they support each other, they love each other, and they love us, and we love them.
The marketplace relies on Grant's because it is reported, it is clear, it is prepared to stand apart from other papers, it is contrarian when it needs to be, but it's not hostile or sneering, and it's accurate. It has a literary tone, it has a sense of humor.
The cartoons are absolutely fabulous, deadpan.
Hank Blaustein deserves a supporting award. His biweekly cartoons are just fantastic. But great editing and great writing and great insight will always be in demand, and Jim embodies all 3 of those.
It delighted me to think that there was 2 teams, and so when he came home from work at the end of each day, I would excitedly run up to him and ask him, Dad, did the Bulls win today or did the Bears?
Grant's is not TMZ, it's not TheStreet.com, it's not Huffington Post. It's not long-form journalism per se, but I'm gonna guess it's maybe 9,000 or 10,000 words. So to read from cover to cover will take you 45 minutes to an hour. Reader may or may not take investment action based on what they read, but they certainly could.
very, very prescient, nuanced, and complex analyses if you are at all interested in the macro part of the world while you read Grant's.
Jim is deserving of the Lifetime Achievement Award for his body of work. 32 years of Grant's Interest Rate Observer, the years before at Barron's, obviously. His books, he's probably up to 9 or 10 now. His biography of John Adams, he calls John Adams America's first junk bond salesman.
What Jim accomplished is truly astounding. You know, it's a highly profitable publication that also stood for high journalistic principle as an editorial line for free markets and sound money. It crackles with personality and is respected even by the institutions it occasionally criticizes.
I used to like to read him when he was criticizing me.
It's really quite a remarkable achievement. Remarkable.
So let me give you the plan for my talk. First comes an economic history of the world. Following is an examination of the American fiscal and monetary predicament featuring the errors of Lloyd Blankfein, CEO of Goldman Sachs. To show no partiality, I will next delve into the odds on a new financial crisis featuring the errors of James P. Gorman, the CEO of Morgan Stanley. And I will conclude with an exercise in practical and, if the gods allow, profit-making credit analysis featuring the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. It's all going to be great. That's my first forecast.
I'd never see him laying down the pen. He will never be one of the golfing retirees. That'll just never happen. He'll work until he's not with us anymore. And that's a great thing.